Today with us, Jonas Ridderstrale. He is one of the most known European experts on management. In the last 10 years, he has published with Shell Nostrom 2 bestsellers books, Funky Business and Karaoke Capitalism, and one more with Mark Wilcox, Re-energizing the Corporation. During this period, he has become a great guru for worldwide companies. He talks about the talent, the new paradigms of management, and in the end, how to be competitive in the challenging future as individuals, organizations, and societies. Hello, Mr. Riddestrale. Welcome to Fundación Barrier. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Funky Business is more than a book's title. It has become a clear and simple slogan that, after reading your book, bring to our minds words like innovation, technology change, global village, etc. How do you come up with these successful expressions 11 years ago?
Shell and I, my co-author of Funky Business, had been spending a lot of time in the academic trenches doing traditional research in business administration, management, and strategy. And typically when we went to a dinner, and sort of one of these dinners where you're seated right next to someone whom you've never ever met before, and one of the first questions that you get is always, so what do you do for a living? And as soon as you said, I do research in business administration, that person always turned around and started talking to someone else, because they believed that research and business, and especially the combination of research and business, was probably the most boring thing that anyone could ever spend some time on. So when we wrote Funky Business, we wanted to show them and our other friends who were into music and art and sports that not only can business be interesting and relevant, but it can also be fun and funky. And in fact, it has to be if you want to survive as a company or as a region in today's world. So funky for us was a way of trying to express that today you need to do unconventional business, business as unusual instead of business as usual. And funky could have sort of, it worked well with business because it was kind of weird enough.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that we are still living funky times, or maybe we should look for another concept?
Funky, it's actually quite interesting. When you look at the word funky, etymologically, I mean, the meaning of a word, it has two very different meanings. Of course, it has the meaning that today most people would sort of associate it with, cool, with it, happening. But the original meaning of a word is actually a foul smell, an odor. And I guess to some extent it does capture the times in which we live right now, because on the one hand it is kind of cool and unexpected things are happening all of the time, and it's kind of fun, and we've never really had better tools for creating workplaces that are interesting and products that enable us to do fantastic stuff. But on the other hand, we've also had this foul smell of failure for capitalism, or whatever you prefer to call it. So yes, I mean, we're living in paradoxical times, and funky is a paradoxical word. So,
and what are the main characteristics of this kind of frenetic period we are living? It's like every man for himself, or the law of the jungle. Or...
Well, I would say that if we look at the last 15 to 20 years, a number of things have changed for better or for worse. I mean, we all speak capitalism today. I mean, if we go back 20, 25 years, it was only a small part really of the world population that was integrated into the global market economy. We all speak capitalism, but we do speak it with slightly different accents. I mean, there is a European accent which is different from the American accent, which is a little bit different from the Asian accent of capitalism. But a market economy is not an ideology. I think sometimes if we consider the debate that we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years, a number of commentators have confused it with an ideology, and it's not. A market economy is a machine. It's a very simple machine, and it does exactly one thing. it sorts stuff into two piles, the efficient pile and the inefficient pile. And you can take just about anything and put into this machine. You can take a football player like Leo Messi, and you put Messi into the machine and the machine will go tick, 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 very efficient. Or you can take an artist like Lady Gaga, and you put Gaga into the machine and the machine will say tick, 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 efficient. Or you can take an entire country, Greece, and you can put Greece into the machine. You have to push a little bit because it's pretty big, and the machine will go tick, inefficient. Now, the effect of all this is that we are left with a world with a very clear difference between the best and the rest. Two piles, the efficient pile and the inefficient pile. Now, is there something wrong with the machine? Because a lot of commentators believe there is. Well, if you believe there is something wrong with the machine, you also believe that Leo Messi is a very bad football player, and you believe that Greece is a very successful economy, and you believe that General Motors makes the best cars in the world. Now, I don't believe they do. I've tried a General Motors car, and it's not as good as a BMW, and it's not as good as an Audi. But there could be something slightly more fundamentally wrong with a machine, in that there's something wrong with the principle, this efficiency principle. And maybe we've built a machine that produces efficiency, but it produces efficiency at the absence of sustainability. And if we've done that, if we have a machine that is short-term efficient, but long-term not sustainable, and I'm not only talking about economic sustainability, but environmentally sustainable, and also from a personal point of view. I mean, we have a lot of people who feel stressed, bored, lonely, and anonymous. And that's the kind of discussion I think we need to have. We need an open kind of capitalism, a kind of capitalism that actually cares.
Mm-hmm. So from your point of view, what's the next stage of the capitalism? I mean, nowadays it seems that it's in some sense out of control. Or should we need to stop and talk about this kind of concepts, sustainability, mechanisms of control? Or what's the next step?
Well, out of control sort of presupposes that you can control, and I'm not too sure that you can, and that you even should. There's also a difference between what do you think will be the next steps and what do you think should be the next steps, because I'm not 100% sure that there's a perfect overlap. I think the next step will be regulation. It will be, some of that regulation will be on a European level, a North American level, and an Asian level. Some of it will be on a global level. But the downside with sort of going down the regulation route is that you decrease efficiency, but I'm not too sure that you increase sustainability. I think the only way in which to keep efficiency at its present level, because we don't want to sacrifice efficiency, and to boost sustainability, is to take a look at values. I think we need to reinvent our values, and those values need to permeate not only the leaders of business, because at the end of the day, we need not look further than ourselves and see that we do want the cheapest, we do want the best, we do want to enrich ourselves. And I think unless people are willing to accept some kind of personal responsibility in the way they vote with their money for all this, I don't think long-term wise we're going to see that much change. And unfortunately, the invisible hand that Adam Smith wrote about, if the invisible hand does not belong to a body with some kind of a moral sentiment, it quite quickly becomes a very visible fist that has a tendency to come down on those who have the least.
As you said in your books, technology, institutions and values are forces of funk, forces of change. But it seems to me that two of them, institutions and values, are less willing to cope with the challenging future, with the technology change. What's your opinion?
Technology is the cue ball. You know, when you play billiards, I mean, technology has that effect, and it's very, very difficult for the institutions to keep up with the kind of technological changes and breakthroughs that we see today. And maybe it has always been the case. If we go back in time when we got the automobile a little more than 100 years ago, people, they had 2 bottles of wine and they went out driving and they were speeding and stuff. And suddenly we realized, geez, I mean, we have to create some institution around this new technology because people are dying like flies. And I think the same is happening now, but technology definitely has the lead. In terms of values, I think we're seeing a lot of experimentation with values, and some of that is probably caused by the fact that values are not anymore something that you can take for granted. I mean, when I grew up in Sweden, there was a church in the middle of the little village. Today, right next to the church, there could be a mosque or a synagogue, and our value systems are overlapping and merging and sometimes colliding. But I think we're seeing some pretty interesting stuff when it comes to values. I certainly have difficulties understanding the values of very young people, so they must be doing something which is kind of interesting. But technology for sure is the driver, and that will push us and necessitate changes also in our institutions and our values.
And what about the institutions? I mean, technology, values, but institutions, what are the relevant institutions in the coming years?
For me, I would say two. The first one is the limited company. The limited company was put up at a point in time when capital was the scarcest resource. And the beauty of a limited company was, of course, that you could maximize risk-taking on the societal level by minimizing the liability that you had as an individual. So it was a perfect institution in response to the new technologies that opened up for the Industrial Revolution. We got a number of people who put in money, and we needed the money to fully utilize the potential of the new technologies. But what if capital isn't the scarcest resource? And I'm of the opinion that it isn't. Instead, it's talent, knowledge, competence. And the price of money is the real interest rate. That's really what money costs. And the price of money has come down over the last 10, 15, 20 years for the simple reason that there's an abundance of money, which is not visible to most people. But in relation to the scarcity of ideas, and good ideas, because there's an abundance also of bad ideas. There's nothing new under the sun. And maybe we need a new institution, because otherwise there will be unknown side effects. Enron, the big scandal. Why did we have a scandal in Enron? Well, I think at least in part because the company changed business model from a very raw materials, asset-based business model into a business model that was much more financial, ideas-driven, intellectual capital rather than physical capital. In that situation, when you have a number of people who are at the helm of a company, and they need to transfer most of the profits to those who supplied only stupid money, I think you are tempted at times to do unlawful things because, at least to your own mind, you're doing good because you're trying to correct an even bigger wrong. So the limited company, I think we need to think about, and we see it already. I mean, Linux, all these self-organizing endeavors, new institutions, people who are collaborating, using the internet to link up and do stuff. Ownership and property rights, for me, would be the second institution where we need to rethink. Property rights make sense so long as you're talking about property, so long as you're talking about physical assets. And I don't think we should, make all goods in our economy publicly available to everyone. But if knowledge is the key resource, and knowledge grows with usage, I'm pretty certain that at some point in time, we have to make knowledge and information completely publicly available. And the kind of legal battles that we're seeing right now, related mostly to the internet and file sharing, I think eventually we will have to give up. Because if we try to minimize the exchange of information and certain types of information and knowledge, long-term